have we already solved the mysterious Bloody Wolf's identity in Diablo 4? And how exactly does the wolf's presence perhaps prove that the Lord of Hate, Mephisto, has already returned? Since its appearance, the Bloodied Wolf appears to be an enigmatic benefactor of our character from the beginning of the game. We first caught glimpse of the strange hellhound in the revealed opening cinematic in February, and then a much more involved meeting during the open beta in March. But the big question is, who is he really? And what role is he yet to play out in the story? In this video, we'll explore a few plausible theories and discuss the potential identity of the Bloodied Wolf, and how we believe we've already solved his true identity in Diablo 4.
You're stuck in an illusion created by the Horadrim. The portal will lead you through this crude trap.
As a baseline to these theories, let's look at the wolf's motives in aiding the player.
Why are you helping me?
Oh, it's very simple. You want to stop Lilith, and I want you to succeed. But you'll never do that by following the Horadrim. I like the world the way it was, without Lilith. Her little game of rebellion will only lead to chaos. You've already seen visions of the damage she can do.
Despite all of his seemingly good intentions, the wolf doesn't really seem to be serving anyone else than his own interests, and by his words as well. Of course, other figures in Diablo's history have shared this trait. From the Sin War to the End of Days, let's discuss three notable figures who have had little issue with making deals with even enemies to further their own agendas. Right off the bat, theorists immediately began pondering the possibility of this figure being the means by which we would see the return of Diablo. And rightly so. From the introductory cinematic, we see the flash of a skull that resembles Diablo's own, as it also appears in concept art and merchandise. Furthermore, when we encounter the wolf in the darkened halt en route to meet Neyrelle at the Horadric Vault, he helps us to escape the illusion put in place by the Horadrim by opening a fiery portal to none other than Tristram yet again. Only this Tristram is a darkened, burning vision that seems like hell itself reached up from the corrupted depths and swallowed it whole. Corruption laid there once by the Lord of Terror himself, and the wolf speaks on this with utter assurance, as if familiar with the events firsthand.
Tristram, the Horadrim of old imprisoned Diablo, the Lord of Terror beneath the earth. And then they built this town nearby. You can see how that turned out.
Admittedly, this connection isn't particularly strong, although it does make sense. After all, Diablo 2 had his claws in the corruption of Sanctuary for his own ends, so why would he want anyone else turning it from what it was?
I live again.
Even less likely, yet still on many a mind, is the deposed Horadric mage Zoltan Kulle. Kulle has been no stranger to tales of immortality from Diablo 3 to Diablo Immortal, and it likely wouldn't surprise anyone that he managed to work his way into this form. Plus, it does sound like the voice acting performance of Steve Bloom. After all, from the homunculi formed in his own image to crude stone golems, Kulle is, if nothing, resourceful in his ability to create vessels for his lingering spirit to inhabit, and depending on how canon the Nephilim's acquisition of Kanai's cube is to their actual story, Kulle may have even slipped something in or even sought aid in its use to create something to bind him to a new form. Stranger things have happened in Diablo, and one cannot deny that his distinctive distaste for the Horadrim and that signature chuckle are a little on the nose for the decapitated mage. Maybe a bit too on the nose. But Kulle wasn't the only figure on this list to bear a deep hatred for the Horadrim, and none more so prevalent than the Lord of Hatred himself, Mephisto. And despite all of the more subtle nuances of your meeting that points to other possibilities, perhaps the most overlooked factor was in the very skull we see flash before us in the opening scene of the game, making Mephisto our prime candidate for the Bloodied Wolf's true identity. To further illustrate the salient facts that lead us to this conclusion, these runes initially threw many a lore hound, including Tails, who was on Team Diablo regarding this particular topic. But a cursory glance into the Book of Adria by a couple of internet sleuths has pointed to an exact match to the rune shown next to Adria's description of how she bound Mephisto's soul to the Black Soul Stone, saying, and quote, "I marked Mephisto's soul after Baal. I think I had grown too confident. My master's plan had been working very well, and I had accomplished things no other human could. When I found the Lord of Hatred's soul, it fought back with a rage that I had not anticipated. More than once it seized my mind, and if my ritual did not have safeguards built into it, I would have been lost. Nevertheless, I completed my task. Even in my arrogance, I still knew that hatred was a dangerous force. I left nothing to chance. I conducted the ritual with offerings from live human sacrifices, using fresh blood and organs to build the three-sided cage, and the 3 anchors both inside and outside the circle. If I'd used one less anchor or brought one less sacrifice, I would have failed. Adria the Witch." By this description, the runes are undoubtedly formed of that same binding spell, meaning the soul of the Lord of Hatred is bound in that form. And while it can be theorized that the symbol may represent Mephisto in terms of basic identity, in occult understanding, the symbols are relative to the one they're typically targeting. And Adria goes on to discuss the purpose of the additional markings in that passage. It seems strange that a bone carving would have the same properties as a soul stone, but this clue from Adria's binding of Baal may offer some further clarity. The power of destruction is not an easily controlled thing. My ritual did not attempt to do so. The central rune carved into a human jawbone amplified Baal's power, but the outer runes anchored it within the circle. I could feel a moment of pure satisfaction racing through his spirit, for the spell made him feel like he'd just inhabited a new host body. He quickly understood the truth, that I was imprisoning him until my master could make use of his spirit. And as Zoltan Kuhl once theorized, and was later attempted by Tal Rasha, that a mortal form held similar properties to that of soul stones. Ergo, it stands to reason that, with the right spell work, the soul of even a prime evil could be bound within the form of a great beast. Plus, as a side note, with the wolf's skull exposed, Mephisto has a consistent theme of exposed bone through flesh as the host body deteriorates, showing the Lord of Hate's true form. Just ask Sunker Kerr. This also points to a few areas of the prophecy that I've pointed out in another video. But now, larger questions loom. Was this a part of another of Mephisto's grand schemes? Is it a willing imprisonment? Who obtained Adria's specific spell work that supposedly no other human could have conjured, besides the Nephilim during the Darkening of Tristram event from the temporal cultists? If that is the exact same spellwork at all we know is, only time will tell.
Why are you telling me all this?
To warn you, a day will come when the Horadrim stumble. Don't be there when they do.